On one quiet afternoon, Madison Clysdale's life changed forever, and the world would never be the same. Her story isn't just about success or fame, it's about overcoming one of the most devastating tragedies imaginable. But how did she find the strength to keep going? Today, we're diving into Madison's heartbreaking journey, a tale of resilience, loss, and the human spirit's incredible power to heal. Before the world knew her name, Madison Clysdale was just a quiet girl living in a small town, hidden behind a smile that few ever questioned. Her early years were marked by a kind of invisible hardship that didn't leave bruises or scars but instead left emotional imprints that would shape her for life. Born into a modest home where financial insecurity was an everyday reality, Madison learned early on to keep her needs small and her emotions even smaller. Her parents, though not unloving, were often distracted by their own struggles. Her father worked multiple jobs to make ends meet, and her mother wrestled with mental health issues that went undiagnosed and untreated for years. Madison, the eldest of 3 siblings, quickly assumed the role of caretaker, packing lunches, doing laundry, and helping with homework before tackling her own. These weren't the dramatic tragedies you see in movies or read in headlines. They were the kind of slow-burn challenges that erode a person's sense of self over time. School was her only escape, but even there, she was never the popular girl or the standout student. She was smart, observant, and kind, but she blended into the background, reliable, never remarkable. Still, she harbored big dreams. Madison loved music and writing, often escaping into her own little world with a notebook and headphones, scribbling lyrics or poems that no one would ever see. It was her way of coping, of channeling the emotional chaos into something beautiful, even if no one else ever got to read it. She felt deeply, but never outwardly. To those around her, she was just the quiet one, pleasant, dependable, and always smiling. But that smile masked a growing weight, a sense of invisibility that can only come from being the one everyone leans on but no one really sees. Her earliest years taught her how to survive, how to adapt, how to wear masks, but they also taught her to doubt her own worth. When you're raised in a world where your needs are constantly on the back burner, you start to believe they're not important. Madison would carry this belief with her into adolescence and adulthood, and it would influence everything: her friendships, her relationships, her career choices, and most tragically, the way she treated herself. The foundation of her life was built on silence, sacrifice, and emotional endurance, and no one, not even Madison, understood how much of her identity had been shaped by that quiet suffering. And while the world would one day know her for much louder, more public moments, it was these quiet beginnings that defined the emotional blueprint she would keep returning to, again and again. But just when it seemed Madison's life was destined to stay hidden in the shadows, something unexpected happened, something that would change the course of her life forever. Was it a chance encounter? A single moment of courage? Or perhaps an unforeseen tragedy? This turning point would not only challenge everything she knew about herself but also put her face to face with a part of her past that would force her to confront what she had always avoided. As Madison stepped into the unknown, she couldn't shake the feeling that the same emotional scars she'd carried for years were about to resurface in a way she hadn't prepared for. What she didn't know was that this new chapter would bring her closer to a darkness she'd long buried. And it would threaten to unravel everything she had worked so hard to keep together. Would Madison finally break free, or would the weight of her past prove too much to bear? Madison Clysdale never sought fame in the way some influencers or aspiring celebrities do. For her, it happened almost by accident: one video, one post, one vulnerable moment shared online that unexpectedly resonated with thousands of strangers. What began as a simple expression of creativity turned into a viral sensation. Overnight, Madison went from being an invisible girl with a quiet past to someone people across the internet were suddenly watching, following, and commenting on. It should have felt like a victory, but for Madison, it was a moment filled with confusion and quiet dread. She wasn't prepared for the attention, the endless opinions, or the emotional roller coaster that came with being thrust into the public eye. Her social media exploded with likes, shares, and comments, but beneath the digital applause was a deeper, darker undercurrent of pressure that she didn't know how to handle. At first, she tried to embrace it. She smiled through live streams, posted cheerful content, and carefully curated a version of herself that seemed upbeat and confident. But the truth was, Madison was cracking under the weight of expectations she never asked for. Every post became a performance, every outfit a statement, every word a potential target for criticism. The very people who claimed to love her were also quick to turn on her when she made even the smallest misstep. She was accused of being fake, attention-seeking, or too emotional. Suddenly, the world felt like a stage she was trapped on, unable to leave, constantly being judged by strangers who didn't know the real her. The fame also pulled her further from the people who truly knew her. Friends who had been there during her early struggles didn't know how to relate to her newfound online persona. Some drifted away quietly, while others lashed out, accusing her of changing. But the truth was, Madison hadn't changed, her world had. She was still trying to process everything that had happened to her growing up, still trying to make sense of her identity, but now she had to do it with thousands of eyes watching. There was no roadmap, no guidebook on how to be yourself when the world only wants a version of you they can consume. And perhaps the most tragic part of it all was that this fame, this sudden surge in attention, made her feel even more isolated than she had before. In a crowd of followers, she felt lonelier than ever. Because when the spotlight hits too soon, it doesn't just illuminate you, it exposes every fear, every insecurity, every unhealed wound. And for Madison, it lit up all the parts of her she had tried so hard to keep hidden. As Madison's journey into the world of fame deepened, she found herself at a crossroads. Would she continue to play the part expected of her, or would she find the courage to break free from the persona she had so carefully crafted? But little did she know, the worst was yet to come, and the pressure she was under was about to push her to the brink. For Madison Clysdale, fame was already a heavy burden to carry. But what made it even more unbearable was that it came hand in hand with betrayal, the kind that doesn't just break your heart, but fractures your sense of trust forever. At a time when she most needed genuine support, someone from her closest circle turned against her. This wasn't just a passive drifting apart or a misunderstanding, it was a deliberate and public act of sabotage. Madison had confided in this person, someone she'd known for years, shared her private thoughts, fears, and personal struggles. That trust was shattered when private messages, photos, and deeply personal information were leaked online, intentionally. The betrayal was calculated and cruel, and it hit Madison like a punch to the chest. The internet responded the way it often does, with chaos. Screenshots spread like wildfire across social media platforms, and within hours, Madison's carefully curated image was torn apart. Rumors spun out of control, memes were made at her expense, and the once-loving fanbase quickly turned into a digital mob. Some people believed the lies. Others chose to laugh at her pain. It felt like a nightmare Madison couldn't wake up from. Her DMs were flooded with hate, accusations, and assumptions from strangers who felt entitled to judge her character based on out-of-context messages and manipulated stories. The worst part? She had no idea how to defend herself without revealing even more of her private life. Every word she said could, and would, be twisted. Behind the scenes, Madison was spiraling. The betrayal from someone she had once considered family felt like a deep, personal failure. She questioned everything, her ability to choose good people, her judgment, her own self-worth. She became increasingly withdrawn, second-guessing every interaction and feeling paranoid that more secrets might be exposed. Even people who were still loyal to her couldn't get close. She had been burned too badly. The safe space she had tried to build, both online and offline, crumbled beneath her feet. The psychological damage of that betrayal lingered far longer than the trending hashtags and gossip threads. It planted a seed of mistrust that would influence every relationship Madison had afterward. She stopped letting people in the way she used to. She smiled less. Her content changed, becoming more cautious, more curated, more distant. In a way, that betrayal didn't just break her heart, it broke a part of her spirit. It taught her that no matter how strong a bond may seem, there's always the risk that someone might use your pain for their own gain. And that painful lesson would echo throughout the rest of her journey. Behind the filtered photos and carefully crafted captions, Madison Clysdale was fighting a private battle that very few knew about. As her public image gained traction and her following grew, she entered into a relationship that, at first, seemed to offer her the emotional refuge she had been craving. This person appeared attentive, supportive, and proud of her success. But slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the relationship began to erode her sense of self. What started as minor critiques became constant criticisms. What once felt like affection turned into control. Madison, already bruised by betrayal and overwhelmed by the pressures of public life, clung to the relationship in hopes that love could fix what pain had broken. But what she didn't realize was that she had walked straight into an emotionally abusive situation that would take years to fully understand and escape from. At first, the signs were subtle. He'd question her outfit choices, claiming he just wanted her to look classy. He'd discourage her from posting certain content, framing it as concern over how others might perceive her. Madison, already dealing with a fragile self-esteem, interpreted these moments as care. But gradually, the control grew more suffocating. He demanded access to her phone, monitored her messages, and picked fights over harmless interactions. He isolated her from friends under the guise of just wanting time alone together. Madison started ghosting group chats, turning down collaborations, and declining events, all because she feared how her partner might react. Publicly, she smiled and posed for pictures with him. Privately, she was unraveling. She never told anyone. Not her closest friends, not her family. She convinced herself she could handle it. That maybe if she changed, the relationship would improve. That maybe she was overreacting. But inside, she was shrinking. Her confidence was eroding, her creativity was drying up, and her once bright spirit was dimming fast. The worst part? Her followers noticed. "You seem different. Are you okay? Why do you look so sad lately?" They commented, messaged, speculated, but no one really knew the truth. Madison was trapped in a cycle of manipulation, gaslighting, and fear, all while pretending everything was fine. Eventually, she reached a breaking point. It wasn't one big fight or a dramatic confrontation that ended things. It was a quiet realization that she didn't recognize herself anymore. That she couldn't live another day feeling small in a world that kept asking her to be larger than life. Leaving wasn't easy. There were tears, threats, guilt trips, and relapses. But she walked away. And in doing so, Madison didn't just leave a toxic relationship, she began the long, painful process of rebuilding her identity. Piece by fragile piece. When Madison Clysdale finally cracked under the weight of everything she had been carrying, her childhood wounds, the betrayal of her closest friend, and the emotional scars left by her toxic relationship, it didn't happen quietly. It happened live. On a night like any other, she decided to go live on social media to connect with her fans, hoping to distract herself from the emotional storm brewing inside her. But instead of a polished, smiling influencer, what the world witnessed was a young woman unraveling in real time. Tears streamed down her face as she tried to explain how lost and broken she felt. Her voice shook, her thoughts scattered, and within minutes, viewers began screen recording. The live stream ended abruptly, but the damage was already done. Clips spread across the internet within hours. And instead of compassion, what followed was mockery. Rather than being met with support, Madison became a trending topic for all the wrong reasons. Meme accounts took clips of her crying and paired them with jokes and sarcastic captions. Influencers reacted to the video for views, dissecting her every word with no understanding of the emotional state she was in. People accused her of being dramatic, attention-seeking, or worse, faking it all together. And while some fans defended her, their voices were drowned out by the overwhelming tide of ridicule. The internet had turned her pain into entertainment, and that realization devastated her more than the breakdown itself. What was supposed to be a moment of vulnerability became an invitation for public humiliation. Behind closed doors, the aftermath of that livestream was even darker. Madison shut herself off from nearly everyone. She stopped posting, stopped responding to messages, and even stopped showing up to brand deals and online commitments. She was emotionally paralyzed, ashamed, scared, and furious all at once. How could so many people laugh at her lowest moment? How could the same followers who once cheered her on now be the ones throwing stones? It made her question everything, not just her career, but her worth as a human being. If the world could be so cruel, was there any safe space left for her? But even in the darkness, a small spark of survival remained. She began seeing a therapist and leaning, hesitantly, on a few people who had proven they truly cared. It wasn't a straight line toward healing, but step by step, she began to understand that her breakdown wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a sign she had held everything in for far too long. Madison's mental collapse marked a painful chapter in her story, but it also opened the door to something she had been avoiding: real, honest healing. For someone who had once been on the fast track to becoming a household name, Madison Clysdale's professional downfall was both swift and brutal. Just a year earlier, she was booking major collaborations, building partnerships with well-known brands, and receiving offers that most content creators only dream of. Her name had clout. Her face was recognizable. But beneath the surface, things were already beginning to unravel. The emotional toll of betrayal, public humiliation, and relationship trauma had left her drained, creatively, mentally, and physically. She couldn't keep up with the demands of her online presence, and the cracks started to show. Missed deadlines, half-hearted content, cancelled appearances. Slowly, the brand deals stopped coming in. Followers began to unfollow. And before long, the algorithm stopped favoring her altogether. The internet is a fickle place. One moment, you're the center of attention. The next, you're replaced by someone newer, shinier, and more marketable. Madison's break from posting, initially a decision made for her mental health, became a death sentence for her digital presence. Out of sight meant out of mind. And as her numbers dropped, so did her opportunities. Former collaborators distanced themselves. Agencies stopped replying to emails. People she had once mentored or supported publicly never even reached out. The silence was loud. But what hurt even more was the way her failure was treated like gossip, not grief. Online forums dissected her downfall like a case study. Was it the mental health stuff? The messy relationship? The viral meltdown? Everyone had an opinion, but very few people had empathy. No one acknowledged how hard it is to keep performing when you're barely surviving. To Madison, it felt like she was being punished not for doing something wrong, but for being human. The rise had been public. Even more so. It was humiliating. She tried to bounce back, tried launching a podcast, tried revamping her content style, tried returning with transparency and vulnerability. But the momentum was gone. The audiences weren't listening the way they used to. The magic, whatever it had been, had disappeared. And in its place was a deep void of self-doubt and professional uncertainty. For someone who had built her identity and livelihood online, this collapse didn't just threaten her career, it threatened her sense of purpose. This was a different kind of tragedy, not loud or violent, but slow and suffocating. Madison had once believed that if she worked hard enough, stayed kind enough, and remained authentic, success would follow. But real life doesn't always work like that. And as she stood in the ruins of everything she had built, she was forced to ask herself, what now? Just when Madison Clysdale thought she had endured the worst, life dealt her a blow so deeply personal, so emotionally devastating, that it stopped her in her tracks completely. During her slow climb toward healing and self-reclamation, she experienced a sudden and unexpected loss in her family, someone who had quietly been her anchor through all the chaos. Whether or not the public knew it, Madison had always leaned on one particular person, her grandmother. A steady presence since childhood, her grandmother had been the one who showed Madison unconditional love when the rest of her world felt unpredictable and cold. She was Madison's safe place, someone who never asked for anything in return, never judged, and always believed in her. When her grandmother passed away, it felt like a pillar had collapsed. The grief didn't just wash over Madison, it drowned her. For a while, she didn't post at all. She didn't create, didn't reply to messages, didn't show up for interviews, projects, or collaborations. She just disappeared. Fans speculated, tabloids invented stories, but the truth was far more painful than anything anyone could imagine. Madison was grieving the only person who had loved her without conditions. And in the quiet that followed, all the old traumas resurfaced. The unresolved childhood pain, the toxic love, the loss of her career. It was as if this single moment of grief had unlocked a vault of buried sorrow she wasn't prepared to face.